The morning sun filtered through the blinds of their Lecky apartment, painting soft lines across the bed where Amara lay, staring at the ceiling. She heard Tunde moving about, the clinking of his watch, the shuffle of his shoes, the low hum of a man preoccupied with his thoughts. They had been married 7 years. 7 long, empty years. No child's laughter had filled the house. No cries in the night. Only the heavy silence that sat between them like an unspoken accusation. At first, they laughed it off. They said God's time is the best, and Tunde would pat her shoulder, smile, and say, "You'll see, Amma. Next year we'll have twins." But after countless doctor visits, tests that said nothing is wrong, and well meaning aunties whispering, maybe she's too career focused, Tunde's patience began to crack. Amara noticed it in the way he stopped joining her for dinner, how his eyes slid over her when she entered the room, how he no longer prayed with her before bed. One night, after a tense silence, she whispered, "Tunde, are you still with me in this?" He sighed, not looking up from his phone. "Amara, I'm tired. Every month, the same story. I'm beginning to wonder if maybe—" "If maybe what?" she asked softly, her heart pounding. "If maybe we're not meant to be parents," he said, voice low. "Or maybe it's you." Those words sliced through her like a blade. She bit her lip and turned away, blinking back tears. Tunde's growing restlessness found company in Kemi, a young, lively event planner he met during a corporate gala in Victoria Island. She had an easy laugh, the kind that made a man feel seen again. She called him T, told him he was too fine to be worrying, told him some women don't know what they have, and when she sent him a message one night, "T, I think I'm pregnant." It was as though the heavens had opened. He didn't ask questions. He didn't even think. The relief drowned out the logic. Finally, he thought, proof that I'm not the problem. Within a week, the house that had once been their sanctuary became hostile. Tunde came home one evening, jaw tight, eyes hard. "Pack your things, Amara," he said quietly. She froze. "What are you saying?" "You heard me. I don't want to fight. Just go." "Because of what?" "Tunde, talk to me." He exhaled. "Kemi is pregnant. I can't have her suffering outside while you sit here doing nothing. I need space." The words didn't register at first. Pregnant. The air left her lungs. For a long, aching moment, she stood there, her wedding ring glinting under the light, a silent symbol of everything crumbling around her. Finally, she nodded slowly. "If that's what you want." She packed her things that night, not just clothes but the broken pieces of her heart, and took a taxi to her Aunt Ngozi's house in Surulere. Aunt Ngozi, a retired teacher with a warm heart and sharp tongue, welcomed her without question. "You'll be fine, my daughter. Men think they hold the world, but they forget who steadies it." In those quiet nights, Amara wept, but she also began to heal. She started a small online business, Amma's Haven, selling handcrafted skincare products. Within months, it began to grow. She poured herself into work, finding peace in creation, purpose in independence. Still, sometimes when she caught her reflection, she wondered how her life had become a story of betrayal and exile. She loved Tunde still. That was the hardest part. Back in Lekki, Tunde was basking in the illusion of a new beginning. Kemi paraded her supposed baby bump with pride, and he bought into every lie, the prenatal vitamins, the fake scans, the emotional manipulation. But cracks were forming. The housekeeper whispered to the driver, "Madam Kemi, dey act somehow, oh. That belly no be like real one." Soon, Tunde would start to notice too, the inconsistencies, the subtle deceit. But by then, it would be too late. Because the truth, like Lagos rain, might delay, but it never fails to fall. The first lie was small. Kemi claimed she had morning sickness, but refused to eat the pap and akara Tunde brought her. "I can't stand the smell," she said, pushing it away dramatically. He smiled then, mistaking her disgust for pregnancy symptoms. He even rubbed her back gently. But the second lie was harder to ignore. Her baby bump appeared overnight. One week she was slim and glowing. The next, she wore loose gowns that looked padded. At first, Tunde didn't question it. Love, or what felt like it, had blinded him. He told his friends he was going to be a father. He even called his mother to share the news. The old woman, ecstatic, had gone to the village to give thanks at church. But the longer Kemi stayed, the stranger things became. She avoided hospital appointments, claiming the doctor had traveled. She refused to let him accompany her, saying she didn't want to jinx the pregnancy. And one night, when Tunde reached out to touch her belly, she flinched. quick, almost fearful. Meanwhile, in Surulere, Amara was slowly rediscovering herself. Her business, Ama's Haven, had started attracting attention on Instagram. Her natural skincare oils became popular among Lagos women tired of harsh chemicals. Orders poured in from Akeja to Aja. She worked from Aunt Ngozi's modest bungalow, filling the rooms with the smell of shea butter and lavender. The once broken woman now moved with quiet grace, not seeking revenge, only peace. Her aunt would watch her sometimes and shake her head. You see what pain can do? It either destroys you or builds you. You chose the latter. Amara smiled faintly. Auntie, I just don't want to lose myself anymore. Back in Lekki, the truth was unraveling. One afternoon, Tunde returned from work early. He found Kemi in the living room, fast asleep, her baby bump peeking out from her dress. But something was off. Her breathing, the flatness of her stomach under the fabric. He leaned closer. Curiosity got the better of him. He lifted the hem of her dress ever so slightly, and there it was, a neatly folded towel tied around her waist. His body went cold. He stepped back slowly, disbelief flooding him. Kemi, what is this? She jolted awake, eyes wide. Tunde, you're not supposed to. What is this? He thundered, voice trembling with anger. You told me you were pregnant. Kemi burst into tears instantly. I didn't mean to lie, T, please. I just, I didn't want to lose you. You said you wanted a family, and I thought maybe if you believed. He stared at her, horrified. So there's no baby? No doctor? She sobbed harder. I love you, Tunde. He turned away, disgusted, his entire world tilted. The shame hit him harder than the betrayal. The memory of throwing Amara out replayed like a curse. He sank into the sofa, his hands over his face. Oh God, what have I done? That night, he couldn't sleep. The walls of the house, once filled with excitement, now echoed with regret. He remembered the way Amara used to wait up for him, the way she said goodnight, even when he ignored her. He picked up his phone, scrolling through old pictures. Amara smiling at the beach, flower on her cheek from baking, her eyes filled with a kind of love that was pure and undeserved. Tunde began to weep. The next morning, he packed Kemi's things and asked her to leave. She begged, but he was firm. The driver helped load her boxes into a Bolt, and by noon, she was gone, leaving behind nothing but shame and a few fake ultrasound papers. He called his mother that evening. Mama, he said quietly, I've made a mistake. Amara didn't deserve what I did. His mother sighed deeply. You see, my son? In life, when you let pride speak louder than truth, it always ends in sorrow. In Surulere, Amara was locking up her small shop when she saw a black SUV pull up. Her heart skipped. The door opened, and out stepped Tunde, tired, thinner, guilt written all over his face. He took a step forward, but she didn't move. Amara, he said softly, voice cracking, I don't even know where to begin. She looked at him quietly, her face unreadable. Then don't begin with excuses, Tunde. Begin with truth. He swallowed hard. There was no baby. Kemi lied. I believed her because I wanted to, because I was weak. Silence. The noise of Lagos, distant honking, the sound of a hawker shouting pure water, 100 naira, filled the air between them. Amara finally spoke. You threw me out like I was nothing. Tunde's eyes glistened. And that will haunt me for the rest of my life. Aunt Ngozi's voice called from the veranda at Amara, who's that? She turned slightly. It's Tunde. The older woman eyed him sharply. The prodigal husband. Tunde lowered his head. Good evening, Ma. Aunt Ngozi crossed her arms. Evening. I hope you've come with sense this time. He nodded humbly. Amara sighed deeply. I'll listen, Tunde, but understand if you want anything from me now, it won't come through tears or gifts. It will come through actions. He nodded again, voice trembling. I'll do anything, Amma. Anything to make it right. She looked at him one last time, then turned away. We'll see. And as he drove off that night, she watched from the window, torn between the ache of old love and the peace she'd built without him. Tunde didn't rush her. For once in his life, he understood that love could not be demanded. It had to be earned. He began to show up differently. He would drive to Surulere on weekends, not to beg, but to help. He'd buy cartons of raw materials for Ama's Haven, coconut oil, shea butter, empty bottles, quietly dropping them off before leaving again. Sometimes, he'd sit with Aunt Ngozi, listening to her endless wisdom and scolding. Young man, she'd say, stirring her pot of igusi, trust is like a cracked mirror. Even if you fix it, you'll still see the line. But if you want peace, learn to live with that line. Yes, Ma. he'd reply humbly. Amara noticed. She didn't say much, but she saw the difference. The arrogance that once ruled him was gone. He no longer talked like a man who wanted control. He acted like one who wanted forgiveness. Still, she kept her distance. One Sunday, she was invited to speak at a women's business seminar in Ikeja about building something from pain. Her story moved people. When she spoke of resilience, her voice trembled, but her eyes stayed steady. Afterward, a man named Chike approached her, a banker with kind eyes and an easy smile. He had been listening quietly from the back row. You spoke like someone who has seen rain and still chose sunshine, he said warmly. Amara laughed softly. That's one way to put it. They began to talk, then to meet. Chike was patient, gentle, the kind of man who asked questions and truly listened. He didn't pry about her past. He simply respected her space. For the first time in years, Amara felt something new, peaceful interest. But deep down, she knew her heart wasn't free yet. Meanwhile, Tunde was facing his own mirror. He attended counseling, on his own, after Amara mentioned it as one of her conditions. He joined a men's support group that met every Thursday evening in Ikoyi, where husbands spoke about ego, insecurity, and mistakes they'd made. He learned how deeply the fear of infertility had eaten at him, how much of his anger had come from shame. One night, after a session, he wrote in his journal, I used to think being a man meant being right. Now I know it means being responsible, especially when you're wrong. Weeks turned into months. Then one afternoon, Amara called him. Tunde, can we talk? His heart raced. Of course. Where? Same cafe in Surulaire, 5 p.m. He arrived early, nervous. When she walked in, he noticed something different. Not in her looks, but her aura. She had become whole. I've seen your efforts, she began softly. I see the change. But I need you to understand something. I won't go back to being who I was. That woman you married 7 years ago, she's gone. I know, he said, his voice low. I don't want her back. I want you. As you are now. Amara studied his face. The pride that once clouded his eyes had melted into something quieter. Humility. I'll come back, she said finally, but on my terms. What are your terms? 1. Transparency. No secrets. 2. We rebuild, but I keep my business and my independence. 3. Counseling together. And 4. Patience. This won't be quick. Tunde smiled through the tears threatening to fall. You have my word. When she moved back in months later, their home in Lekki felt different. There was no grand celebration, no crowd of friends, just 2 people, starting over quietly. She set up a small office corner for Emma's haven in the spare room. He helped paint the walls himself, smearing paint on his jeans, laughing when she teased him. They prayed together again, slowly, hesitantly. Sometimes they would sit in silence, holding hands, letting forgiveness settle in the spaces words couldn't reach. Then, one morning, Amara woke with a strange feeling. She dismissed it at first, maybe exhaustion, maybe stress. But when it persisted, she went to the hospital. When the doctor came back smiling, holding the test result, her knees almost gave way. Congratulations, Mrs. Adeyemi, the doctor said softly. You're pregnant. Tears filled her eyes instantly. For a long moment, she couldn't speak. She just sat there, hand over her heart, whispering, after everything, God after everything. When she told Tunde that evening, he froze, then fell to his knees, covering his face. Amara, he whispered, I don't deserve this. She smiled through her tears. Maybe not, but grace isn't about deserving. They held each other and wept, not from sorrow, but from the heavy, cleansing kind of joy that only comes after storms. The first rain of the year came softly that morning, not the wild Lagos kind that floods the streets, but a gentle drizzle that kissed the earth awake. Amara stood by the window, one hand resting on her growing belly, the other wrapped around a mug of tea. The house smelled of rain, new paint, and peace. She could hear Tunde in the kitchen, humming a hymn as he tried not to burn the toast again. Some mornings still carried awkward silences, but most carried laughter. Quiet, genuine, and unforced. When he walked in, holding a plate with unevenly buttered bread, she smiled. You're improving, she teased. I'm learning from the best, he replied, grinning. Their love had become like the rain outside, gentle, steady, cleansing. Amara gave birth to a baby girl on a bright Thursday afternoon at Lagoon Hospital. Tunde never left her side. He held her hand through every contraction, but as whispering prayers, tears in his eyes. When the baby's first cry filled the room, something inside him broke and healed at the same time. The nurse handed the tiny bundle to Amara, and for a long moment the two of them simply stared in silence. Tunde whispered, "She's perfect." Amara smiled weakly. "What shall we call her?" He thought for a moment, then said, "Chizaram. God has answered." Motherhood changed Amara, but not in the way people expected. She didn't quit her business or lose herself in diapers and feeding bottles. Instead, she learned balance. During the day, she worked from home while the baby napped. In the evenings, Tunde took over so she could rest. Sometimes, Aunt Ngozi would visit, fussing over the child and scolding Tunde for hovering too much. "Let the woman breathe," she'd laugh. Not every moment is an emergency. Their home, once filled with suspicion and pain, now carried warmth. But healing wasn't a straight line. It rarely is. There were nights when Amara would wake from dreams of betrayal. Tunde's voice, Kemi's laughter, the night she was thrown out. On those nights, she'd sit in the living room, rocking Chizaram and whispering to herself, "I forgive." Again and again, "I forgive." Forgiveness had become a daily act, not a one-time choice. One evening, months later, Chike sent her a message. He congratulated her on the baby, told her he had moved to Abuja for work, and wished her happiness. She smiled at the message for a long time before replying, "Thank you, Chike. You met me when I was rebuilding. I'll never forget your kindness." As she hit send, she felt a strange lightness in her chest, the final piece of her past slipping away quietly. Tunde, too, had changed deeply. He no longer led with pride or tried to prove his worth. He showed it in consistency, picking up groceries without being asked, turning off his phone during dinner, attending therapy even after the counselor said he'd made progress. One Sunday, after church, he stood before the congregation and gave a short testimony. "There was a time I lost everything because I believed a lie. Not just a woman's lie, but the lies I told myself. That being a man meant being right. That love meant control. But God used my failure to teach me what real love is: humility, truth, and grace." Amara listened from the back, tears streaming down her face, their daughter sleeping peacefully in her arms. Years passed quietly. Ama's Haven grew into a full-fledged brand with a store in Victoria Island. Tunde eventually left his old firm and started a counseling foundation for men struggling with emotional and marital issues, something he wished he'd had years earlier. They were no longer the same couple who once lived in silence and resentment. Their home had become a place of peace. Not perfect, but honest. And every time the rains came, the kind that washed the city clean and filled the gutters with music, Amara would pause, close her eyes, and remember how far they had come, how much they had lost, and how somehow grace had rewritten their story. Love, they learned, is not the absence of pain, but the courage to rebuild after it. It is not control, but partnership. Not perfection, but truth. And sometimes God allows the storms, not to destroy what we have, but to clear the air so new rain can fall. As Amara watched her daughter play by the balcony one evening, Tunde wrapped his arm around her. "We've come a long way," he said softly. She smiled. Yes, the rain came, and this time it made things grow. This is the end of this story. The moral lesson of this story is, no matter how broken love becomes, truth, humility, and forgiveness can rebuild what pride once destroyed. Real love isn't proven by words or wealth. It's proven by honesty, respect, and consistency. And sometimes the storms we fear are the very rains that help us grow. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, subscribe for more powerful African stories about love, life, and redemption. Thank you for watching. Until next time, stay inspired and remember, even after the rain, life can bloom again.